Alright, so what we have here is we got a spare tire, we got a 3/4 horsepower motor. This bracket here acts as the brake. There is, you can't see it here, there is springs here that actually pull the treadle back down and engages the brake into the tire, which instantly stops the hammer from running. Alright, so the pillow block bearing is just bolted to a piece of flat stock. This square piece that comes up is, I believe, 1-inch square, solid square stock. The shaft itself is 1.25 inch diameter. This is 1/8 inch thick plate that is welded to the rim itself. So right now I have the motor off. Well, I shouldn't say that. I broke the actual foot to the motor itself. I don't think it had anything to do with this 12-pound sledgehammer sitting here. But anyways, as you can see, when it's lifted, the motor itself comes up, engages the tire, and gets it running. When it comes down, the brake itself engages into the tire. So what we have here, we've got a very large turnbuckle. So what this does is when you turn it, it pulls this upper bar that leads to the spring. It pulls that bar down or up, which in turn raises and lowers the hammer so you can have different thickness stock that you can run in between the dies. Alright, so from the turnbuckle we go up and it comes over to a spring setup. And a lot of people actually use a leaf spring, which I opted to just use, which I believe is a mild to medium carbon content steel. So it goes from there, it comes over, and it's on a pivot point with 2 pillow block bearings. And then it comes down over to the head. So what happens here is as the motor is lifted and engaged into the tire begins to spin. Now this shaft here is offset from the center, so as the tire spins, it acts as a cam setup, which lowers the spring and raises the hammer. Okay, now this is looking down inside the hammer guide itself. Now, at 4 points all the way around it, I have UHMW, which is a high density plastic. A lot of times used in food processing plants, things like that. So at 4 points it goes around and it keeps the hammer from twisting or shifting from side to side or front to back. And it allows the use of these as wear plates so that you can either shim or replace these as needed. Alright, now that UHMW plastic is actually, I drilled and tapped the plastic itself and just ran short bolts in it, and it seems to be holding with absolutely no problems. Alright, now the dies. Now these dies I actually ground into a sort of rounding die or drawing die. They are made from a forklift tine or a forklift fork or lift truck fork, lift truck tine, however you want to say it. They are drilled and tapped and welded to these plates, and the plates are bolted, drilled and tapped into the hammer in the anvil itself. Alright, now the hammer is actually 3 separate pieces. It was originally 2 pieces and a different anvil, and it was actually a 60-pound hammer at one point in time. I tore it all apart, rebuilt it, and when I rebuilt it, I made it an 85-pound hammer. Now, these 2 pieces of steel are mild steel, and then this one is a piece of forklift truck tine. And drilling and tapping the forklift tine is a pain in the ass. I went through 2 taps, broke 1 tap in there, had to actually break it out with a hammer and a punch, and then tap it all over again. So, honestly, I wouldn't use a forklift truck tine. Alright, let's take a look at the anvil itself. Now this thing is 7 1/4 by 7 1/4 inches by 34 inches long. It weighs between 470 and 500 pounds. The original anvil that I had was actually, this here was the cutoff, the end of it, when I cut it off to length. It was 2 pieces of C-channel just welded together. It was a terrible design. I regret ever doing it. It really wouldn't move metal. I actually went to the anvil more than I went to the power hammer. So you can use a hollow tube or whatever for an anvil, but I really highly recommend not doing it. I will actually link a video, or in the description I'll have a link to the original video that I did of the original setup, how the power hammer was. And it had a 3450 motor on it. It went way too fast. I couldn't interchange dies, and like I said before, it just wouldn't move the metal that I wanted it to move. So, but I mean, if you want to put a hollow pipe and fill it with sand on your for an anvil on your power hammer, go ahead. But I'm telling you, it just doesn't work. Alright, so the tire is just, well, I should go back. The original design that I had for how to adjust the hammer up and down was, I had a different wheel hub assembly, and I had it bolted up where you could slide it up and down. And it was a terrible design. Again, it was just a terrible design. So I ended up welding this plate in and drilled this whole thing out into a circle, and then cut it out and filed it all around, and then drilled the holes for the actual hub assembly. So from the I-beam itself, I just welded a plate that came over, and then I have another piece of I-beam that comes up to this giant piece of C-channel that I think is 16 inches wide, is what the actual spare tire is bolted to. Alright, so the treadle itself is again 1 1/4 shaft, which is overkill, but it's what I had, with pillow block bearings. This is just bolted to the I-beam itself. Alright, so now we're going to take a look at how the adjuster actually adjusts the hammer. So right now, the dies are actually touching. So we're going to raise it up. Now if you watch the hammer itself, it's just going to start raising up in the air. now, I got almost 3 inches of space there. But I can actually run up to about 5 inches of thickness of material, just because of the flex in the spring itself will allow me to be able to hammer that much. Alright, so there's going to be a few changes that I'm going to do to this. One is I'm going to obviously put a new treadle. It's going to have a wrap around that can work 180 degrees around the entire thing. Another thing is I'm going to redo the motor mount, and I'm going to make the actual brake itself adjustable so I can use it with the brake if I want, so then I can do single strikes, or I can slide the brake back and I can just run it full time and it'll run however I want it. I can just like do light taps or full blows. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put sides on it. The whole thing all the way across is going to have sides up to here, and then it's going to be filled with sand and oil just to add more weight and to try to get rid of some of the flex that's in it here. I'm also going to put a guard that comes across up here so that nobody can, because I got 4 kids, I don't want them running up and getting wrapped up in the spare tire. And I think that's about all that I really have planned at this time, so that's my hammer. Hope you enjoyed it. Some other videos on my channel showing me running it and it smashing hot steel, so just go explore my channel and I'm sure you'll find them.